Number five is race records and hillbilly music. These are two terms that were used from about 1920 to 1940, both Southern and folk tradition. Later on, race records becomes R&B. Hillbilly becomes what we think of as country music, but back then it sounded a lot different than it does now. The reason both of these styles of music and actually any kind of popular music become popular is just basically humans have an interest in exotic music or things that are different. And so, especially for the North, there was just this interest in this unheard of and new Southern music, including jazz and blues and gospel. Ralph Peer was a talent scout for Oki Records or Oka Records. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. And his job was to go down south from Tin Pan Alley area from New York and to scope out new sounds and new types of music that people would want to listen to. Um, and then you'll have a lot of people that were vaudeville stars or late minstrel show stars, and as they changed, they would try these new types of sounds. Like Mamie Smith used to be a vaudeville star, but then she switched it over to blues. As long as we're talking about blues, the father of the blues is considered W.C. Handy. Classic blues is always associated with him. He's on about page 129. You need to read about him. He was very influential. His life story is interesting. Wrote political songs for people, among other things. He created the first publishing company that was basically for blues and then early jazz. Um, Basically, classic blues is from the Mississippi Delta to about East Texas. Bessie Smith is considered the empress of the blues. Everybody's got a nickname that's important. Her big song in the book is St. Louis Blues, and you should take a listen to that. This is slightly different than country blues, which is more rural, a little rougher, a little bit more working class. You'll have Charlie Patton is in there with the Tom Russian blues. A Texan, Blind Lemon Jefferson, very famous, 1897 to 1929, came up with a term. I'm not sure if your book covers it, dirty or hokum blues, where all the songs have double entendres and talk about really, really racy kind of things, but using funny titles and whatnot. It's worth a read. Robert Johnson is kind of a legend for country blues. Very short life, 1911 to 38. Interesting stories about how he died and whatnot. He's been covered by Keith Richards and Eric Clapton, covered by just about everybody. Just a lot because of the stories that revolve around his life. He's even depicted in the movie. Oh, good grief! The Coen Brothers movie. I just lost the title, but. Uh, it's again almost mythical. Early country, then the book switches more to early country, including Fiddling John Carson, one of the earliest that you'll come across. Again, Ralph Peer is looking for race records at the time, and I just remember the name of that movie. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Actually covers a lot about race records and hillbilly music. I'm not suggesting you watch it. It may not be your cup of tea, but it does kind of give a humorous look at this time period. Again, Ralph Peer is looking for more race records, but he comes across Fiddling John Carson and kind of promotes him through the radio. At first, we find these radio shows like in Atlanta. Fort Worth had a few shows. The big one is Chicago's National Barn Dance. That radio show was super popular at the time. It's a test question. Then the other thing is Nashville's Grand Ole Opry. That's a play on words because that Nashville show came on the air right after New York's uh, opera program, and so we have this them making fun basically of the opera by calling themselves the Opry. Not super important, but basically nowadays, and country music, if you haven't performed on the you haven't made it until you've performed on the Grand Ole Opry stage, which has moved, and we'll talk about that later on. Um, At this time, we're having a few artists that are coming into popularity. Some are more authentic than others. Vernon Dalhart used to be an opera singer, but wasn't doing super well, so he decided to, his original name was Marion Slaughter, and he decided to change his name to break into country music. So he picked two Texas towns, Vernon, Texas, and Dalhart, Texas, and chose that to be his country name. Now, the Carter family is more famous and they're more considered authentic. This is Sarah, AP, and Maybelle. Um, basically, let me see. There's a lot to be said about the Carter family, but there's just a whole lot of continuity, including Johnny Cash later on is married to some of the family. But Maybelle came up with one of the members. She came up with a guitar style of picking that some of you will know about, but it's that thumb and finger movement that we associate with country guitar style picking now, and completely comes from her. Jimmy Rogers is a kind of slightly different mix of that. He's considered a rambler, railroad man. He's actually from Mississippi, but had to move west mainly because of health issues. And there's some nice videos of him singing his railroad type of a song. All of these, not Vernon, but Carter, Jimmy Rogers, and Carter family, Jimmy Rogers, and then even Woody Guthrie are worth listening to. Woody Guthrie, again, a slightly different bent on it. There's been a couple of movies made about his lifestyle. And he spoke to people, well, just because of, middle class to lower socioeconomic type living styles. This was all happening right before the Great Depression and during the Great Depression, which really affected people's listening. 1929 is when the Great Depression hit. Before the Depression, you had an annual market of about 106 million records produced every year. During the Depression, that dropped from 106 to 6. It's just all of a sudden, vast majority of America was poverty ridden. And this is one of the reasons why hillbilly and race records actually increased. It just spoke to people of the time. Take a read on all of these, especially Carter family, Jimmy Rogers, and Woody Guthrie, and their influences of this time period. And that is Chapter 5, Race Records and Hillbilly Music.